Head over to miniaturemarket.com. They have thousands of board games at discounted prices like Suburbia. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be building our own city, trying to have the most population. We're going to be managing income, we're going to be managing reputation, trying to get our population the biggest. We'll be putting in parks and buildings and residential areas and industrial areas. Today we're taking a look at the new second edition of Suburbia from Bezier Games. Let me give you a quick high-level overview of the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. Now, in addition to the other components that come in the game, I want to show off in the box that it comes with these two really nice game trays that, they're separate and they can come out. They have the lids on them. These are all the player components, the money, things like that. And these have all the different tiles that you'll be using in the game, gold tiles, starting tiles, all the different tiles that you'll put out throughout the game. So it's a really nice addition to this second edition here. In Suburbia, you're trying to have the best city by having the most population. Everyone starts with their own sort of city board here. You're going to be building your city off of these starter tiles that everyone starts with. And over the course of the game, you're going to be trying to raise your income and raise your reputation, because at the end of every turn of yours, you'll get a certain amount of money depending on what your income is, and you'll get a certain amount of points, which is population, depending on where your reputation is. And players will be tracking their population, which essentially is points on this board here. It's also a double-sided board where you can go, left to right all the time, or you can flip it over and you can do this sort of snaking type of scoreboard. Now we have this cool little chunky first player marker of the tower. Now let's tell you how tiles interact with each other. Tiles will give you certain things, like this one gives us +1 income. That round matches the round icon and the token here for income. This one gives us -1 income. That's why we start at 0. Reputation. This gives us -1 reputation for each adjacent civic building and residential building. Now these yellow buildings are industrial, there's an icon for it here, and this is all gray buildings are civic buildings, and so this is going to give us -1 reputation here, but this one gives us +1 reputation for each adjacent commercial, residential, or industrial. And because we're next to an industrial and a residential, we're essentially going to be getting +2 for this, but -1 for that, which is why we start at 1 for reputation. Everyone's city starts the same, but I wanted to point that out to you because that's a lot of how this game works, is putting tiles, and some things are going to affect adjacencies, some things are going to affect in your entire city, and some things will even affect over, next door neighbor cities as well. And all these tiles actually have a cost too that you'll need to pay in order to place things into your city. So let's talk about a turn. Now here's where most of the action happens on your turn, where you'll be buying tiles most of the time. Now tiles come in 3 types, A, B's, and C's, and you'll be working through these over the course of the game, and not all the tiles are used each game. There's plenty that are left back in the box, so each game is going to play out a little bit differently. So you have some tiles here, 7 of them that you can possibly buy, and you'll be buying them based upon the price and the price and the spot above. So this one's just $9 because this is 0, but this one is 6. But 6 because it's in an earlier slot, so this one's $12, and so on and so forth. Now, when you buy a tile, you're simply going to pay the money. You start with $15, and let's say we just buy this one, the fancy restaurant. So we'll spend $9, and you'll be placing it in your city next to some other tiles. Now, let's say maybe I put it here. So, number 1, we immediately look here, and it's going to gain us 3 income. Well, that's great. We'll move this up 3. And we look at what else might be going on. This is going to say -1 income for every restaurant, the forks and knives. So there's many other restaurants that will come out throughout the game. And it says for every forks and knives built after this one, we're going to lose an income because, hey, the fancy restaurant's in there, but other restaurants will come in and sort of undercut it. And when it says every, it's like, it doesn't matter whether it's in your city or someone else's. So if you buy this, other players are going to try to buy up restaurants to drive your income down, because their city is going to be taking, income away from your city because they have a cheaper restaurant. And it's different types of restaurants will do different things, but everything's pretty thematic in the game. And that's generally how things work. And at the end of your turn, we would, in this case, look, we'd get 3 income and we'd get 1 population because of our 1 reputation. And that's the name of the game, because the population essentially is points in this game. And then essentially we'd be sliding all these tiles down, which makes them a little bit cheaper. And then you'll bring out a new tile from the top of the stack into this new spot here, and it'll be the next player's turn. There's also goals. There's 1 for however many players there are. So in this case, it's a 4-player game. So this one says, hey, whoever has the fewest amount of commercial buildings is going to get 10 population at the end of the game. Whoever has the most money is going to get 10. Whoever has the most airports is going to get 10. Whoever has the fewest green sort of residential tiles will get 20. Now also in addition to this, each player is dealt 2 of these because there's a whole stack of these in the game. You'll be dealt 2 and you keep 1 and get rid of 1. That's going to be a private goal and a secret goal that you're going to be going over for the course of the game. So this really changes the game as well because it's going to change what you really go for, what you want to avoid, and it really changes your strategies each game. Now let's just say it was our turn again. This is the way the board was. Typically, each one tile is going to be gone off of this board every turn. But let's say it just looked like this. It's our turn, and we didn't want to buy anything. We want to raise some money. We could take one of these tiles, and you just pay what's on here. So in this case, it's 0. But if we want to take this one, it'd be 2. Because sometimes you're taking tiles to deny other players from getting those. Now with this one, we're actually going to turn the tile upside down, and we're going to turn it into a lake. We're going to lake it, and everything adjacent to this is going to get $2. So I'm going to get $6 in income right now. And then later on, any tiles I put around, this is also going to give me $2. And money are these tokens that you'll use throughout the game. And again, at the end of our turn now, we're going to get another $3 and another point. And sort of, you're building this sort of engine of income and reputation. And you're trying to figure out how to make it all work best together. So typically on your turn, you're either buying a tile, laking a tile, or you can put an investment marker. Everyone has 3 of these. You basically will pay the cost of that tile again, in this case $9. And then this tile, just essentially it's like having 2 of them. So this is now, I would go up another 3 on our income. But also, if another player adds another restaurant, instead of it being -1, it's actually going to be -2 income. So this is sort of doubling down on that fancy restaurant, if you will. Now you have a total of 3 of these that you can use throughout the game, but that's just another strategy that you'll use throughout the course of the game. And if you don't have a better move, you can always buy some of the tiles, the same types of the ones that you start with. But if you're low on money or you don't have any of the better options, or some of these might help you just as much as some other options, you can grab some of these tiles and pay for them too. Just like before, you'd get 1 of them. Now these tiles are always fluctuating from the market because even if someone invests, they need to discard a tile by paying just the cost above, which is going to be moving these tiles down every turn of the game, regardless of what move a player does. And again, you'll be going through A's, B's, and then C's, and then shuffled somewhere, usually around, this part of the stack will be a 1 more round tile, and players will play the end of that round and then 1 more, and that'll be the end of the game. And then players will see who gets the points for these different goals, plus the private goals, and you'll be able to convert some money into points or population, and whoever has the most at the end is the winner. Now speaking of population, which are essentially points, as you cross these red lines, this is an interesting twist to this game, and sometimes you'll cross more than 1 when you score points. And as your borough grows, it costs more to maintain, and its small town charm will decrease. And so for each red line you cross, both your income and your reputation will go down by 1. So in this case, if we had passed 2 of them, each would go down 2, and it gets a little harder as you get better and better with your city. Now, the game comes with this great glossary, and it has, a page for each of the type of tiles, B tiles, for example, and it talks in very much detail as to what each tile does, in case the icons aren't, straightforward enough, although once you've played the game once, you'll pretty much know what they all mean. For example, this casino is really cool. It's $22, but you go down to 3 reputation, but when you pass those red lines I show you, you don't go down in income, which is really cool. And there's actually one of these in the C tiles that does something similar, the PR firm. Well, your PR is great, so as you cross those red lines, you don't go down in reputation. It's a really powerful tile. But this shows you, all the different tiles that are in the game. Again, there's tons of different ones. There's also a separate expansion. I'm not going to go into the great details, but it does come with its own trays. There's these cool border tiles. It essentially includes all the expansions up into this spot. Like this huge military base, for example. It will get you 1 income, and you'll get 5 population for each adjacent civic building. Really thematic. And these ones are huge. They, these little, there's all different kinds of these. These make the game a ton more fun. I mean, the game's great as it is, but I love these border tiles. There's also different things like challenges and bonuses that come out at the beginning of the B tiles and the C tiles, and different things like, hey, if you have at least $45, you'll get to raise your reputation by 3. Or the bonus one is if you have at least 5 income, you'll get 2 more. So these bonuses, again, there's tons of these bonus tiles and challenge tiles. These ones, the bonuses at the beginning of the B tiles, you'll have one of these. At the beginning of the C tiles, you have some of those. Now, there's 3 main expansions here. We have, 5-star, which was the first expansion to come out. There's Suburbia Inc. Actually, I think Suburbia Inc. was first. And then 5-star. And then there's Nightlife, which was a relatively new one. all sorts of new goals. So there's tons more content here in the expansion. 5-star also added a new mechanism with stars. It also adds a 5th player, so it gives you a light blue board, all the components to go with it. Now this tray here, if you take the base box, you can fit these trays and the base game trays in the standard base box. And the expansion also comes with a glossary of all the different tiles. You'll mix in these expansion tiles depending on which ones you want to play with the base games. There's also some special tiles too, like the Ish and Spiel tiles, there's convention tiles, things like that. It's hard to believe that almost a decade ago, the original Suburbia came out, because back then games were different. And today, this game still holds the test of time and still can compete with any other good Euro game. So let's dive into what this second edition is. Now, back then when it first came out, it was a great game, but the art and such was things that people complained about. It wasn't quite as beautiful, definitely not as beautiful as it is now. And then in recent years, they came out with the Suburbia Collector's Edition. It was grandiose with all the expansions and just unbelievable production. And now you can basically get all the updated art that was in that collector's edition. If you don't want to spend all the money on the collector's edition, now you can play Suburbia with a more, again, there's a lot of stuff in here. I'll talk about this in a minute. But if you didn't want to spend the top dollar for the collector's edition, you now can play the great game that it is with the new art. So I love that they updated the art to match the collector's edition. That alone is worth it. If you've never played Suburbia, it's my favorite. I think it's the best city building game. It's definitely the best one I've ever played. I've played a handful of these, and I used to play SimCity a lot as a kid on the video game, and this essentially is like SimCity the board game. I love it. So let me talk a little bit about what I love about this, and then talk a little bit about this and the collector's edition at the end of this. So I love that you're building your city, and that doing so is thematic. So we saw in that overview that, hey, you got a fancy restaurant, but when other players, including you, get more restaurants, it's going to take customers away from that. And so you're going to actually reduce your income, right? There's certain things like, hey, you don't want to put the nuclear power plant next to a residential area, right? It's going to be bad to do that. It's going to be great to put, a boardwalk near both commercials and residential, right? So there's like, all the tiles and what they do are so thematic, and I love that aspect because you really do feel like you're planning a city because everything sort of makes sense. Oh, this is great. Well, yeah, of course the people want to be right near the school. That makes sense, things like that. So it's thematically awesome. I love that aspect of it. Each game is definitely very different due to not only the goals, but also not all the tiles are used each game. So that variability, even with the base game, there's tons of tiles in there, and each game is definitely going to feel different, even with just the base game. I love that you're trying to manage your cash and your reputation, and you're trying to find the balance of this. And at the beginning, you're really trying to get that income going so you can start to, buy better and better tiles. And then at some point, you're going to sort of cross that line where you're like, okay, I really need to start getting this reputation up because I'm falling behind the points. And you're trying to sort of, it's a tricky balance, but this game has a very interesting arc with that, where you're trying to build up cash and then turn that cash into tiles that are going to give you more reputation. And not saying you can't get reputation early, but generally speaking, the game has an interesting arc like that. Growing definitely gets much harder as you build. Again, thematic, but it also makes it harder. I think it stops a runaway leader. You definitely don't have that in this game because the farther you go, the harder it is to go even more. A brilliant little design trick to make that work, and thematically, again, it works too. I love the interaction with not only your own city, but the city with everyone else. Again, with the sort of the airports, you get, hey, one for every airport. Oh wow, you've got one, good, I'll get this. And the interactions between the player, sure, you're building your own city, and that part of it is sort of a solo thing, but it's not a solo game because you're looking at what other players are doing, and you're always interested in what they're buying. You're always trying to take tiles that they want, or at least discard them. There's definitely a lot of player interaction here. Another positive is the expansions are available, which I showed you there. Now, on the negative side of things, this game's an older game, and it doesn't have, I'd say, guardrails like some games do here, where they want to make sure your first experience is the best, right? It's an older design, and if you don't know what you're doing and you're playing and nobody's there to tell you and you haven't played before and you don't really focus on trying to get your income up soon right off the bat, you could be punished the whole game, and it can be really hard to get that motor running if you go down a strategy that just isn't going to work, especially with the tiles that are out there. And so as a beginner, it can be a little bit punishing, but if you're playing with someone who's played before, and they can help you sort of see those potholes, not to step in, you'll be fine. So just be aware that not every experience, if you haven't played before, is going to be amazingly awesome. You can get to the point where you're like, wow, this is just too tight, I can't get any money. Again, it might just happen once, because once you learn it, you won't do it again. But just be aware of that. Try to get your income up early, and you probably won't have that problem. The game has a lot of tiles, and so it's a decent amount to sort of set up and put things out. It's not as bad until you get to the expansions, and then it's like, okay, you got to figure out, well, which expansions do I want to use? This one, or this one. You can kind of use them all. You can use them one at a time. And then how many of each tiles do we mix in? And there's some good formulas in there that the rules give you, but doing that gives you definitely a lot more setup time and takedown time to put everything back and stuff like that. But those are minor nitpicks because this game is amazing. Now let's talk about, this game has gotten a Saxophone Saturday in the past, so it's already passed that test. And so I've seen some people talking online already about like, well, what's the difference between this and the collector's edition? You know, you're getting a lot of what was there in the collector's edition, the new art, all the expansions, the con tiles and things like that. The collector's edition came with like a really awesome tray that you'd push the tiles down on. It was like, sort of like a semicircle thing, a humongous tower that all the tiles would stand up really tall. It also had recessed player boards, so the little income tracker doesn't, you know, get knocked around. And there was also some each player board was its own city, and there were certain tiles, like promo tiles for those different cities, and there were some other promo tiles. So, but like generally speaking, this is a lot of what the collector's edition was, and it's at a lower price point. So if you haven't played Suburbia before and you think you might like it, this is a great place to start. And if you end up loving it as much as I did, then maybe you could give it away to a friend or sell it and then get the collector's edition that's still available as well. So, but I'm liking that they're bringing that new artwork to a lower price point that players are going to be able to enjoy not only the game that it is, which is awesome, but also now enjoy the beautiful production, the way it looks on the table now too. And that is Suburbia 2nd Edition with the expansions. This has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games by helping you find the next one you'll love.